Jake Morrison counted the scratches on his cell wall. 437 days since they threw him into this metal box. 437 days since he refused to pull the trigger on innocent families. The prison floated in space like a dead rock. Kepler 442b mining colony, they called it. But everyone knew it was just a fancy name for hell. Gray walls, gray floors, gray jumpsuits. Even the food looked gray. Jake sat on his thin mattress and watched the small window show nothing but empty space and distant stars. His cell door opened with a loud bang. Guard Captain Linda Hayes stood there with her usual mean look. She was a tall woman with short black hair and cold blue eyes. Jake learned early that she enjoyed making prisoners suffer. "Rise and shine, traitor," Hayes said. "Time for your shift in the mines." Jake stood up slowly. His back hurt from sleeping on the hard bed, but he never let it show. Marines don't complain, even former ones serving life sentences for treason. "Move it, Morrison. The rocks won't dig themselves." The hallway smelled like oil and sweat. Other prisoners shuffled along in chains, their faces tired and empty. Jake recognized most of them now. There was Pete Williams, who stole food shipments to feed his starving family. Next to him walked Carlos Mendez, caught smuggling medicine to outer colonies. Behind them was old Frank Davis, who spoke out against the government's alien policies. Jake realized something months ago. Half the men in this place weren't real criminals. They were people who said no when the government told them to do terrible things. The mining tunnels were dark and hot. Machines hummed and clanked as prisoners worked with heavy tools. The air tasted like metal and dust. Jake's job was simple: dig out rare metals from the rock walls. The work was hard and dangerous. Cave-ins happened every week. Toxic gases leaked from cracks in the walls. "Morrison," Hayes shouted from across the tunnel. "You're behind quota again." Jake kept digging. His hands were covered in cuts and his muscles ached, but he worked steady and calm. He learned that getting angry only made things worse. A younger prisoner named Billy Rogers was struggling with a heavy drill nearby. The kid couldn't be older than 20, sent here for refusing to fight in what he called an unjust war. The drill was too big for him and he was falling behind. Without thinking, Jake moved over to help. He took one end of the drill while Billy took the other. Together they made quick work of the rock wall. "Thanks," Billy whispered. "Keep your head down," Jake whispered back. "Hayes is watching, but it was too late." Hayes marched over with 2 other guards. "What do you think you're doing, Morrison?" "Helping a fellow worker finish his job," Jake said simply. Hayes hit him across the face with her shock stick. Pain shot through his jaw, but Jake didn't fall down. "You work alone." "Everyone works alone. That's the rule." "Sometimes rules need to change," Jake said. The shock stick hit him again. This time Jake fell to his knees. The other prisoners watched but said nothing. They learned long ago that helping someone meant punishment for everyone. "You think you're some kind of hero?" Hayes grabbed Jake by his gray shirt. "You're a traitor who refused direct orders. You let alien scum escape instead of doing your duty." Jake looked up at her with steady eyes. "My duty was to protect innocent people. Those families had done nothing wrong. They weren't people. They were aliens. They had children." Hayes kicked him in the stomach. Jake doubled over but didn't cry out. He thought about that day 3 years ago. The Centauri Massacre, they called it. His unit was ordered to eliminate a refugee camp. Families with kids, old people who couldn't even walk. All because they came from a planet that fought against human expansion. Jake remembered looking through his rifle scope at a mother holding her baby. The child looked just like a human baby, except for small blue markings on its forehead. The mother was singing softly, trying to keep her child calm while explosions went off in the distance. He couldn't do it. He put down his weapon and ordered his unit to stand down. When his commanding officer demanded he follow orders, Jake arrested him instead. He helped the families escape to neutral space. The court-martial was quick. "Treason against humanity," they said. "Life in prison without chance of freedom." Jake accepted the sentence without fighting it. He knew what he did was right. "Get back to work," Hayes said. "All of you." The prisoners returned to their digging. Jake slowly stood up and picked up his tools. His ribs hurt, but nothing felt broken. He had taken worse beatings in the Marines. As the day went on, Jake noticed something strange. The guards seemed nervous. They talked in quiet groups and kept checking their communication devices. Supply ships that usually came every week were late. The food portions were smaller than usual. During the evening meal, Jake sat with some of the other prisoners. The cafeteria was loud with the sound of metal trays and tired voices. Frank Davis, the old man who spoke against the government, leaned over to Jake. "You hear anything about what's got the guards worried?" Frank asked. "No, you notice it too?" "Hard not to. They're acting like they expect trouble." Pete Williams joined the conversation. "My work detail was near the communication center today. Heard something about energy readings in the outer system. Sounded like they didn't know what it was." Jake thought about this. In space, unknown energy readings usually meant ships. Big ships that the sensors couldn't identify. "Could be pirates," Carlos said. "They sometimes hit mining colonies." "No," Jake shook his head. "Pirates don't make guards this nervous. They know how to handle pirates." That night, Jake lay on his bed and stared out the small window. The stars looked the same as always, but something felt different. The prison was quieter than usual. Even the machine sounds seemed softer. Jake had learned to trust his instincts during his military years. Something big was coming. He could feel it in the air like the calm before a storm. The guards were scared of something they didn't understand. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring another day of digging and another day of haze making his life difficult. But deep down, Jake felt like things were about to change. He just didn't know if the change would be good or bad. Outside his window, the stars continued their silent dance across the black sky. Unknown to Jake and everyone else on the prison, something was moving between those stars. Something ancient and powerful that had been searching for a very long time. And it was coming to find prisoner 804. The alarm started screaming at 3 in the morning. Jake woke up fast, his military training kicking in. Red lights flashed in his cell and the sound of running boots echoed through the hallways. Guards shouted orders, but their voices sounded scared instead of angry. Through his small window, Jake saw something impossible. Huge ships hung in space near the prison station. But these weren't like any ships he had ever seen. They looked alive, pulsing with soft blue and green lights. Their surfaces seemed to move and breathe like living skin. All prisoners returned to cells immediately. Hayes' voice came through the speakers. "This is not a drill." Jake was already in his cell, but he pressed his face against the window to get a better look. The ships were massive, each one bigger than the entire prison station. They had long curved shapes that reminded Jake of something from old Earth stories. Dragons, he thought. They looked like dragons. More guards ran past his cell. Jake could hear Director Carl Bennett shouting on the radio. Bennett was the man in charge of the whole prison, a short, fat man who usually stayed safe in his office. Where did they come from? Bennett's voice cracked with fear. How did they get past our sensors? Jake listened carefully. In the Marines, information was life. The more you knew about a situation, the better chance you had of surviving it. The prison's defense system started firing. Jake felt the station shake as laser cannons and missile launchers attacked the strange ships. But something was wrong. The weapons fired for a few seconds, then stopped completely. "Weapons are offline," someone yelled. "All systems are shutting down." The lights in Jake's cell went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but everything felt different. Quieter, like the whole station was holding its breath. Then a voice spoke. It came from everywhere at once, the speakers, the walls, even the air itself seemed to carry the words. The voice was deep and old, like distant thunder. "People of this station, we mean you no harm. We seek one among you. Bring us the one you call prisoner 804. Jake's heart stopped. That was his number. His prison identification, prisoner 804. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Jake moved away from his cell door and waited. He could hear Bennett screaming orders. "Find Morrison. Find him now." "Who is prisoner 804? The voice asked again. This time it sounded closer, like someone standing right next to Jake. The cell door burst open. Bennett stood there with 6 guards, all holding weapons. Sweat ran down Bennett's face and his hands shook. "That's him." Bennett pointed at Jake. "That's 804. Hayes stepped forward with energy chains, the kind used on the most dangerous prisoners. "Hold still, traitor." "Why do they want me?" Jake asked. "Shut up," Bennett said. "You're going to do exactly what we tell you. Maybe we can trade you for our safety." They chained Jake's hands and feet, then marched him through the prison corridors. Other prisoners pressed against their cell doors, trying to see what was happening. Jake saw fear in their eyes, but also something else. Hope, maybe. The main docking bay was full of guards and prison staff. Everyone looked scared. Through the large windows, Jake could see one of the alien ships moving closer. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest feel tight. The ship's surface showed patterns of light that moved like slow lightning. "Open a channel," Bennett ordered. The communication officer's hands shook as he worked the controls. Static filled the air, then cleared. "We hear you," the deep voice said. "We have prisoner 804, Bennett announced. "We're willing to make a deal. There will be no deals. We do not bargain with those who cage the righteous." Jake felt the station shake again, but not from weapons this time. Something was connecting to the docking bay. A soft scraping sound came through the walls. "They're docking," the communication officer whispered. "Impossible," Bennett said. "Our docking systems are completely different from any known alien technology." But the docking bay doors opened anyway. Air pressure equalized with a loud hiss. Then they came through the doorway. Jake had seen pictures of dragons in old books when he was a kid. These beings looked like those ancient stories come to life, but also completely different. They walked on two legs like humans, but their skin was covered in scales that shifted color from blue to green to silver. Their faces were long and noble, with large eyes that held ancient wisdom. Instead of wings, they had flowing cloaks that seemed to be made of starlight. The leader was taller than the others, and his scales were darker, almost black with flecks of gold. When he moved, Jake could feel power in the air around him, like standing near a lightning storm. "I am Valorian the Starseer," the being said. His voice was the same one that had spoken through the station's systems. "I have traveled far to find the one called Prisoner 804. All the guards pointed their weapons at the aliens, but Bennett held up his hand. "Don't shoot unless I give the order." Valorian looked around the room, studying each person. When his eyes met Jake's, they stopped. The ancient being stared at Jake for a long moment, then did something that shocked everyone in the room. He bowed deeply. "Righteous flame," Valorian said. "Your throne awaits." The docking bay fell completely silent. Jake stared at the alien leader, not understanding. "What?" Bennett sputtered. "What did you call him?" Valorian straightened up and looked at Bennett with cold eyes. "This one bears the mark of moral courage. He chose righteousness over obedience, honor over safety. In our long search across the stars, we have found few like him." "He's a traitor," Hayes shouted. "He refused direct orders and helped enemy aliens escape." "Yes," Valorian said simply. "He chose mercy over murder. That is why we have come." Jake found his voice. "I don't understand." "What do you want with me?" Valorian stepped closer. Jake could see compassion in the alien's large eyes. "Your people stand at a crossroads, righteous flame. They can become protectors of the innocent, as you chose to be, or they can become the very evil you refuse to serve. We have watched species make this choice for thousands of years. Most fail," another alien said sadly. "They choose power over principle, conquest over compassion. But sometimes," Valorian continued, "we find one who shows us that a species has the potential for greatness. You are that one for humanity." Bennett stepped forward, trying to look important. "Now wait just a minute. This man is a convicted criminal. He's serving a life sentence for treason." Valorian looked at Bennett like he was studying an interesting but unpleasant insect. "Yes, he was punished for refusing to kill families with children. Tell me, small man, what does that say about your justice?" Bennett's face turned red, but he didn't answer. "We offer your species a great honor," Valorian said, speaking to the room but keeping his eyes on Jake. "Join the Council of Flames. Help guard peace among the stars. But first, this one must be freed to make his choice." "That's not happening," Bennett said. He raised his weapon toward Jake. "If you want him, you'll have to—" Bennett never finished his sentence. All the weapons in the room suddenly stopped working. The lights dimmed, then brightened. Every computer screen showed the same message in perfect English. "We do not harm the innocent, but we will not allow harm to come to the righteous flame." Jake felt the energy chains fall away from his hands and feet. They hadn't been unlocked. They simply stopped working. Valorian extended his hand toward Jake. "The choice is yours, righteous flame. Come with us and learn what destiny your courage has earned. Or stay here and let your light fade in darkness." Jake looked around the room, at Bennett's terrified face, at Hayes and her cruel eyes, at the guards who had beaten him for helping others. Then he looked at Valorian's outstretched hand. For the first time in 437 days, Jake Morrison smiled. He took the alien's hand. The inside of the alien ship was like walking through a living dream. Jake followed Valorian through corridors that seemed to grow and change as they moved. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch, pulsing gently with soft light. It felt like being inside something alive but not scary, more like being welcomed into a safe place. "Your ship is alive," Jake said. It wasn't a question. "All our ships are grown, not built," Valorian replied. "This is Destiny's wing. She has carried me across the galaxy for more years than your species has existed." They entered a large room with windows that showed the stars outside. But these weren't normal windows. Jake could somehow see in all directions at once, like the room was floating in space itself. The view was beautiful and made him feel very small. "Sit, please." Valorian gestured to a chair that seemed to form itself out of the floor. It was perfectly comfortable, fitting Jake's body exactly. Other aliens entered the room. Jake counted 6 of them, all different from Valorian but clearly the same species. Their scales showed different colors and patterns like fingerprints made of light. "You have questions," Valorian said. "Ask freely." Jake had so many questions he didn't know where to start. "Why me? What's this about a throne? And what did you mean about my species being at a crossroads?" Valorian settled into his own chair, which formed from the floor just like Jake's had. "Long ago, my people learned a hard truth. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. Strength without compassion creates monsters. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we learned better." One of the other aliens, a female with silver scales, spoke up. "We call ourselves the Flame Keepers now. We search the galaxy for species that might choose wisdom over power. Most fail," said another alien sadly. "They develop weapons before they develop understanding. They conquer before they learn to protect," Valorian nodded. "When a species reaches the stars, they face a choice. Become guardians of peace or become predators among the void. We watch for signs of which path they will choose." "What signs?" Jake asked. "Individuals who choose right over easy, who pick mercy over revenge, who sacrifice their own safety to protect others." Valorian looked directly at Jake. "We have been watching humanity for 50 years. Most of what we saw worried us." Jake thought about human history, the wars, the slavery, the environmental destruction. He understood why aliens might be worried. "But then we saw you," the silver-scaled female continued. "A soldier ordered to kill families, who chose court-martial over murder, who gave up his freedom to save innocent lives. We call such individuals righteous flames," Valorian explained. "Their moral courage burns bright enough to guide others. When we find one, we know their species has the potential for greatness." Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I'm not special. I just did what felt right." "Exactly," Valorian smiled, showing teeth that sparkled like gems. "You did what felt right even when it cost you everything. That is the mark of true nobility." The ship suddenly felt different. Jake realized they were moving, but there was no sensation of acceleration. Through the amazing windows, he watched the prison station grow smaller until it disappeared. "Where are we going?" "To meet the council," Valorian said. "The other species who chose wisdom. If you are willing, you will be tested to see if humanity deserves a place among them." "Tested how?" Valorian was quiet for a moment. 3 trials await you. Tests of compassion, sacrifice, and wisdom. They are not easy. Many who attempt them fail. What happens if I fail? Then humanity continues on its current path. Without guidance from the council, your species will likely destroy itself within a few generations. Perhaps they will learn from their mistakes and try again. Or perhaps they will be remembered only as another failed experiment in civilization. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "And if I succeed?" "Then humanity joins the Council of Flames. Your species becomes part of a community that spans the galaxy. You help guide younger species just as we are trying to guide yours." The silver-scaled alien leaned forward. "But understand, Righteous Flame, success means humanity must change. No more wars of conquest, no more genocide, no more treating other species as less than people." Jake thought about the refugee families he had saved, the children with blue markings on their foreheads. What happened to them? "The families I helped escape?" Valorian smiled warmly. "They live free on a peaceful world. The children you saved have children of their own now. They speak of the human soldier who chose their lives over his own freedom." Tears came to Jake's eyes. All those days in prison, all the beatings and insults had been worth it. Those families were alive and free. "The Council knows this story," Valorian continued. "It is why they agreed to test humanity despite your species' violent history." Jake wiped his eyes and tried to focus. "Tell me about these other species in the Council." Valorian gestured, and the air in front of Jake shimmered. Images appeared showing different alien beings. "The Crystalline Collective," Valorian said as crystal-like beings appeared in the air. They value truth above all else. Their minds are connected, so lies cannot exist among them. The image changed to show plant-like creatures with green skin and flowers for hair. The Verdani harmony. They are healers and farmers, devoted to growing life instead of destroying it. Next came warrior-like beings covered in golden armor, the Solareth protectors. They were once a violent species like yours, but learned to channel their strength into protecting the weak. More images followed, a species that looked like living energy, another that resembled dolphins but walked on land, beings made of what looked like living metal. 12 species total, Valorian concluded, all who passed the trials and chose wisdom over power, all who now work together to maintain peace among the stars. Jake studied each image carefully. They're all so different from each other. How do you all work together? Diversity brings strength, the silver-scaled alien replied. Each species contributes what they do best. The crystalline collective provides wisdom. The Verdani offer healing. The Solareth ensure justice. And what would humans contribute? Jake asked. Valorian was quiet for a long moment. That remains to be seen. Your species has great potential for both creation and destruction. You adapt quickly, solve problems creatively, and show remarkable courage in the face of impossible odds. But you also hold grudges, start fights over small differences, and sometimes choose fear over understanding, the silver-scaled alien added. Jake couldn't argue with that. Human history was full of examples of both nobility and cruelty, often at the same time. The trials will show us which side of humanity is stronger, Valorian said. Are you willing to face them? Jake thought about the prison he had left behind, about Hayes and Bennett and all the cruelty he had seen. Then he thought about the refugee families, about Billy Rogers and the other prisoners who just wanted to do the right thing. If this could help my species become better, then yes, I'll take the trials. Valorian bowed his head respectfully. Then prepare yourself, righteous flame. We will reach the Nexus in 2 days. There you will face challenges that will test everything you believe in. What exactly is the Nexus? A space station hidden between realities, Valorian explained. Built by all 12 species working together. It serves as our meeting place and our symbol of cooperation. Jake looked out at the stars rushing past the windows. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home world. People there were living their lives, making choices every day between kindness and cruelty, between helping and hurting. His decisions in the next few days could change the entire future of his species. No pressure at all, Valorian, Jake said quietly. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail and doom humanity? The ancient alien reached over and placed a scaled hand on Jake's shoulder. Righteous flame, you have already proven your worth by the choices you made when no one was watching. The trials ahead will be difficult, but remember, we did not choose you randomly. We chose you because your light already burns bright. Jake nodded, trying to feel confident. In 2 days, he would face trials that could determine the fate of his entire species. He just hoped he was ready. The Nexus was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. The space station hung in a place that existed between normal space and somewhere else entirely. Stars swirled around it in impossible patterns, creating spirals of light that hurt to look at directly. The station itself was huge, made up of different sections that clearly came from different species. Crystal towers stood next to organic domes, while metal rings spun around sections that seemed to be made of pure energy. Welcome to the heart of galactic civilization, Valorian said as their ship approached a docking bay. Jake pressed his face to the window, trying to take it all in. How many people live here? The Nexus is not a city. It is a meeting place. Each species maintains a small presence here, but most return to their homeworlds between council sessions. They docked smoothly, and Jake followed Valorian into the station. The corridors were wide enough for beings much larger than humans, and the ceiling was high enough that Jake felt like an ant. But somehow the space didn't feel overwhelming. Soft music played from hidden speakers, and the air smelled like flowers from a dozen different worlds. Other species walked past them, and Jake tried not to stare. A creature made of living crystal nodded politely to Valorian. A plant being with flowers for hair smiled at Jake with curiosity. 2 of the golden-armored Solareth warriors marched past on some official business. They're all so different, Jake whispered. Yet we all chose the same path, Valorian replied. Peace over war, protection over conquest. It is what unites us despite our differences. They entered a large chamber with a circular platform in the center. 12 seats surrounded the platform, each one clearly designed for a different type of being. This was where the council met to make decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Righteous Flame Jake Morrison, Valorian announced to the chamber. Are you ready to face the trials? Jake's mouth felt dry, but he nodded. I'm ready. A new voice spoke from behind him. Jake turned to see a being made of what looked like living energy, glowing with soft blue light. I am Lumina of the Energy Collective. I will oversee your first trial, the test of compassion. The chamber around them dissolved, replaced by what looked like a battlefield. Two groups of aliens faced each other across a burned landscape. Both sides held weapons and looked ready to fight. Bodies lay scattered between them, evidence that this war had been going on for a long time. The Rockborn and the Flyers have been enemies for 300 years, Lumina explained. They fight over mining rights to asteroids in their home system. Each side believes the other is evil. Each side has committed terrible acts. Can you find compassion for both and help them make peace? Jake studied the two groups. The Rockborn looked like living stones, slow-moving but incredibly strong. The Flyers were bird-like creatures with colorful feathers and sharp talons. Both sides stared at him with suspicion. A Rockborn leader stepped forward, his voice deep and gravelly. Human, the Flyers are thieves and murderers. They attack our mining operations and steal what is rightfully ours. A Flyer leader spread her wings and screeched angrily. The Stoneheads lie. They invaded our nesting grounds and destroyed our young. They show no mercy. Jake walked between the two groups, noting how the dead bodies on the ground included both species. This war had cost everyone dearly. How long since you've had enough resources for both your peoples? Jake asked. Both leaders looked confused by the question. I mean, when did you last have enough minerals and food and safe places to live? The Rockborn leader shifted uncomfortably. It has been difficult. The war consumes much of what we mine. The Flyer leader folded her wings. Our young go hungry while we fight for scraps. Jake saw the real problem now. It wasn't really about who was good or evil. It was about fear and scarcity. What if there was enough for everyone? Jake asked. What if instead of fighting over limited resources, we found a way to create more? He turned to the Rockborn leader. Your people are incredible miners and builders. You could excavate asteroids faster than anyone. Then he faced the Flyer leader. Your people can move quickly through space and see opportunities others miss. You could scout new mineral deposits. Work together? The Rockborn leader sounded disgusted. With them? They killed my nestlings! The Flyer leader shrieked. Jake felt compassion for both sides. They were both hurt, both afraid, both trying to protect their people the only way they knew how. Yes, you've both done terrible things, Jake said quietly. You've both lost people you loved. But how many more will die if this war continues? He gestured to the battlefield around them. Every one of these bodies represents someone's family, someone's child. The question isn't who started this war. It's who will be brave enough to end it. The two leaders looked at each other across the wasteland their war had created. I propose a joint mining operation, Jake continued. Rockborn excavation teams with Flyer scouts. Share the resources equally. Build something together instead of destroying each other. And if they betray us? The Rockborn leader asked. Then you'll face that problem when it happens. But if you don't try, you'll definitely keep losing people to this war. The Flyer leader clicked her beak thoughtfully. My nestlings need food more than they need revenge. Slowly, the two leaders approached each other. Jake held his breath as they met in the middle of the battlefield. The Rockborn leader extended a stone hand. The Flyer leader touched it gently with one wing. The battlefield dissolved, and Jake found himself back in the council chamber. Lumina glowed brighter with approval. Compassion achieved, she announced. You saw past anger to find the pain beneath. You offered hope instead of judgment. Before Jake could catch his breath, another voice spoke. This one came from a massive creature covered in golden armor, one of the Solareth protectors. I am Commander Aurelius. Your second trial begins now, the test of sacrifice. The chamber changed again. Jake stood on the bridge of a spacecraft, looking at a view screen that showed space filled with ships. Some were clearly military vessels bristling with weapons. Others looked like civilian transports full of families trying to escape some disaster. Pirates, Aurelius explained. They attacked the convoy of refugees, demanding all their supplies and valuables. You command the Council flagship, the most powerful ship in this region. What do you do? Jake studied the tactical display. The pirates had faster ships and outnumbered the refugees, but they were cowards who attacked only easy targets. The flagship could destroy the pirates easily, Aurelius continued, but they threatened to kill all the refugees if you attack. Or you could use the flagship as a shield, protecting the refugees while they escape. But the pirates' weapons could destroy even our ship. Jake saw the choice clearly: save himself and his crew or risk everything to protect people he'd never met. He thought about the refugee families he had saved years ago, about the children with blue markings who were now grown up with children of their own. Move the flagship between the pirates and the refugees, Jake ordered. All power to shields. Let the transports escape. Sir, the pirates will focus all their fire on us. We might not survive, then we don't survive. But those families will. The battle was fierce. Jake watched the shields fail as pirate weapons pounded the flagship. The ship shook and systems failed, but the refugee transports escaped safely. Just as the flagship was about to be destroyed, the scene dissolved. Jake was back in the council chamber and Aurelius nodded with respect. Sacrifice achieved. You chose the lives of others over your own safety. The third voice belonged to a crystal being that seemed to contain entire galaxies within its transparent body. I am Sage Pyrian of the Crystalline Collective. The final trial awaits, the test of wisdom. This time the chamber became a simple room with 2 buttons on a table. Above each button was a view screen. A terrible plague threatens the galaxy, Pyrian explained. It will kill billions of beings across many worlds. We have developed a cure, but can only save one world in time. Choose. The first screen showed Earth. Jake could see familiar cities, blue oceans, and white clouds. Billions of humans living their lives unaware of the approaching disaster. The second screen showed a world Jake didn't recognize. Strange purple forests and pink skies, but the beings living there looked familiar. They had blue markings on their foreheads just like the refugees Jake had saved. Your home world, or the world of those you once protected, Pyrian said simply. Choose wisely. Jake stared at the screens, his heart breaking. How could anyone make such a choice? Save his own species or save the people he had sacrificed everything to protect? He thought about his duty as a Marine. Protect human lives. But he also thought about his duty as a decent being. Protect innocent lives regardless of species. Then he saw something both screens had missed. On Earth's screen, he could see the beginnings of human space technology. Ships that could carry people between worlds. On the alien world screen, he saw similar ships from other species. There's a third option, Jake said quietly. There are only 2 buttons, Pyrian replied. Jake stepped away from the table. Then I don't press either one. Instead, I organize the biggest rescue mission in galactic history. Every species that has ships capable of carrying refugees. We can't cure everyone in time, but we can evacuate the most vulnerable from both worlds. The coronation ceremony was unlike anything Jake had imagined. He stood in the center of the council chamber wearing simple clothes, the same gray prison uniform he had been arrested in. Valorian insisted he wear it as a reminder of where his journey began. Let all who witness remember, Valorian announced to the assembled representatives, that greatness often comes from unexpected places, that those society discards may carry the seeds of its salvation. Each council member stepped forward to offer Jake a gift representing their species' contribution to galactic peace. The Crystalline Collective gave him a small crystal that would always show him the truth of any situation. The Verdani offered a seed that would grow into a tree connecting him to all life in the galaxy. But the most meaningful gift came from an unexpected source. On the view screen, Jake saw a familiar face, one of the refugee children he had saved years ago, now grown into a young adult with the same blue markings on his forehead. Thank you, Guardian Morrison, the young alien said. Because you chose to save us, our entire species survived. We are now part of the council as well, and we vote to welcome humanity. Jake felt tears in his eyes. The scared little child he remembered was now a confident leader helping to guide galactic civilization. Your throne, Valorian said, gesturing to the 13th chair that had appeared in the council chamber. It was made of a material Jake didn't recognize, but it felt warm and comfortable, like it had been crafted specifically for him. This isn't really a throne, is it? Jake asked as he sat down. No, Sage Pyrian replied, his crystal body flickering with amusement. It is a seat of service. You rule nothing, but you serve everyone. Jake understood. The council wasn't about power over others. It was about the responsibility to protect and guide, a burden freely chosen by those strong enough to carry it. But his celebration was interrupted by urgent alarms throughout the station. Council Leader Morrison, a Solarith warrior, announced, using Jake's new title, "Human warships approach the Nexus. They demand your return." On the main view screen, Jake saw a fleet of Earth's most powerful battleships arranged in attack formation. Leading them was the UES Democracy, flagship of the human colonial fleet. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. The screen showed the bridge of the Democracy, commanded by Admiral Kate Sullivan. Jake remembered her from his military days. A good officer who followed orders without question. "Jake Morrison," Admiral Sullivan said coldly. "You're under arrest for treason and collaboration with alien forces against humanity. Surrender immediately or we will take you by force." Jake stood up from his council chair. "Admiral, I'm trying to help humanity join a community of peaceful species. This could be the best thing that ever happened to us." "You betrayed your own species," Sullivan replied. "Earth's government has declared you a traitor and enemy of humanity. These aliens have obviously brainwashed you." Behind Jake, the other council members remained calm but ready. He could feel their power, their willingness to protect him. One word from him and the human fleet would be neutralized without harming a single crew member. But that wasn't the way to prove humanity deserved a place in the council. "I'll come with you," Jake announced. Valorian stepped forward in alarm. "Righteous flame, they mean to execute you. Maybe, but if humanity is going to join the council, it has to be their choice, not something forced on them by alien technology." Jake faced the view screen again. "Admiral Sullivan, I'll surrender on one condition. Let me address the people of Earth directly. Let them hear what I've learned and decide for themselves." Sullivan looked suspicious. "Why would you want that?" "It would just prove your guilt. Because I believe in humanity. I believe that when people have all the facts, they'll make the right choice." After a long pause, Sullivan nodded. "Fine. You can have your speech before the execution." Jake turned to address the council. "I hereby resign my position as humanity's representative until my species officially accepts membership." "Valorian, will you keep my chair empty?" "For as long as necessary," Valorian replied sadly. The transfer to the human flagship was tense. Jake walked onto the Democracy's bridge wearing simple civilian clothes, his hands in energy shackles. Many of the crew members he recognized from his military service. Some looked at him with disgust, but others seemed uncertain. "Jake Morrison," Admiral Sullivan announced formally, "you are charged with treason against humanity, collaboration with hostile aliens, and abandoning your post in time of war." "What war?" Jake asked quietly. "Admiral, humanity isn't at war with the Council species. They're trying to help us. They kidnapped you from a legal prison sentence. They rescued me from persecution for doing the right thing. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake spent most of it in a detention cell, but Admiral Sullivan allowed him to record his speech for broadcast. Jake knew he had one chance to reach his people, to help them understand what the Council offered. When they reached Earth orbit, Jake was transported to the same courthouse where he had been convicted of treason 3 years earlier. But this time his trial was broadcast live across all human worlds. Billions of people watched as he was led into the courtroom in chains. The prosecutor was a thin man named Richard Hayes, Linda Hayes' brother, Jake realized. The family apparently specialized in cruelty. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Hayes began, "the defendant stands before you as a traitor twice over. First, he betrayed his military oath by helping enemy aliens escape justice. Now he has betrayed all of humanity by collaborating with an alien invasion force." Jake's defense attorney was an elderly woman named Margaret Foster who had volunteered for the case. Jake suspected the government had chosen her hoping she would provide inadequate defense. "Members of the jury," Foster said in her opening statement, "Jake Morrison is not a traitor. He is a hero who twice chose moral courage over personal safety. Today you will decide not just his fate, but the fate of our entire species." The trial proceeded predictably. Military witnesses testified about Jake's refusal to follow orders. Prison officials described his collaboration with alien forces. But then Foster called her first witness. On the view screen, Valorian appeared from the Nexus station. "I am Valorian the Starseer," he announced to the packed courtroom. "I speak for the Council of Flames, representing 12 species who have chosen peace over war, wisdom over ignorance, cooperation over conquest, Your Honor, Prosecutor Hayes objected. This alien has no standing in a human court. Actually, Judge Harrison replied, since the defendant's actions involved interspecies relations, alien testimony is relevant. Continue, Valorian. 3 years ago, Jake Morrison saved civilian families from execution. Children, elderly, innocent people whose only crime was being born on a world that opposed human expansion. For this act of mercy, he was branded a traitor. Valorian's image leaned forward, addressing the jury directly. We have observed humanity for 50 years. We have seen your capacity for both creation and destruction, for both cruelty and compassion. Jake Morrison represents the best of what your species can become. The prosecutor tried to object again, but Valorian continued. The council offers humanity a choice. Join us in maintaining galactic peace, or continue on your current path toward self-destruction. We have seen species choose wrongly before. They are remembered now only as archaeological curiosities. Is that a threat? Hayes demanded. It is a warning, Valorian replied sadly, and an offer of hope. Over the next 3 days, more witnesses testified. The refugee families Jake had saved spoke about their gratitude. Former prisoners from the mining colony described Jake's protection of the weak. Even some of his former military colleagues admitted he had always been a man of principle. Finally, it was Jake's turn to speak. He stood before the jury, still wearing the gray prison uniform that had become his symbol. The courtroom was silent as billions of people across human space waited to hear his words. 3 years ago, I looked through a rifle scope at a mother holding her baby. Jake began. She was singing to keep the child calm while explosions went off around them. That mother wasn't human, but her love for her child was exactly the same as any human mother's love. Jake looked directly at the jury. I couldn't pull the trigger, not because I was weak, but because I was human. Because humans, at our best, protect the innocent instead of destroying them. He gestured toward the view screen where images of the council species appeared. These beings aren't our enemies. They're offering us the chance to become the heroes of our own stories instead of the villains. Jake's voice grew stronger. I've seen what we could become. A species that explores the galaxy not to conquer, but to protect. That meets other forms of life not with weapons, but with wonder. That chooses to be remembered for our compassion instead of our cruelty. He faced the judge. Your Honor, I'm guilty of choosing mercy over murder. I'm guilty of believing humanity can be better than our worst impulses. I'm guilty of accepting help from aliens who want to guide us toward wisdom, instead of watching us destroy ourselves. Jake smiled. If those are crimes, then I'm guilty as charged. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stood to deliver the verdict. On all charges, we find the defendant not guilty.